For more than a quarter of a century, Susan Wendell has been serving what she thought was a lifetime sentence. Held prisoner by something she had no control over, a horrible disfiguring disorder that sent her spiraling into a world of drug abuse and depression. Her struggle to break free of that prison has been a long and painful journey. Our culture sells beauty as the ticket to acceptability. Some are born pretty, and Susan Wendell seemed to be one of the lucky ones.
I have pretty blue eyes when I was little, huh? Look how blonde my hair was.
Growing up in San Jose in the 1960s, Susan was a typical California girl, blonde and beautiful, with the usual childhood fantasies.
I always had these dreams of how I was going to, even as a little girl, maybe dreaming to be a movie star.
A girl's fantasy of being a beauty queen can be a promise of success if she stays pretty. But Susan's dream became a nightmare when a small lump on her forehead began to grow larger. At sweet 16, she turned down the prom for a date in the operating room.
They thought it was just a fatty tumor, and they'd take the tumor out, and I'd go home, and that'd be great. Well, after they operated, they found out that it was neurofibromatosis.
1973, doctors thought neurofibromatosis, a complex genetic disorder, was life-threatening, had seen few cases, and expected the worst. Dr. Thomas Orcutt has seen many cases of this disease in his years as a plastic surgeon.
It's a very nasty disease, and in Susan's case, it involves mainly her face, which from an appearance standpoint, a social standpoint, is a disaster. But in many other patients, it involves a spinal cord. They end up paralyzed.
NF is usually a mild condition. Symptoms vary from small cafe au lait spots to tumors that grow externally and attach themselves to nerves internally. The good news was Susan's life was not in danger. The bad news was there was no treatment or cure for her condition. The only thing Susan's doctors could recommend was counseling to deal with the emotional fallout.
So we go to the counselor.
As more lumps formed, Susan began to face ridicule from other teenagers.
When it first started, some were very nice and concerned, and others were very mean. They make fun of you. They called me nose and different things like that.
Psychiatrist David Spiegel of Stanford University Medical Center studies the devastating effects stressful disease can have on people's lives.
Girls, unlike boys, tend to become more uncomfortable with their bodies as their bodies mature, and they are particularly sensitive, therefore, to something that would, in fact, disfigure their bodies. And it's a time when teenagers are trying to form social networks, and some of the things that kids do at that time can be very cruel.
During these difficult times, Susan's mother was her major support and best friend. In a desperate attempt to restore Susan's appearance, they gambled on surgery each year throughout her teens. But they discovered surgery was only a temporary solution.
As soon as they would operate, the swelling, there'd be swelling within a couple hours after surgery. And once there was swelling, the tumors would just engulf the area, and it looked the same as before they operated. So it was just like not getting anywhere.
Despite multiple surgeries, as Susan entered her 20s, the tumors continued to ravage her face, spreading down her nose and right cheek. When most young women look forward to a promising future, Susan's life was a medical nightmare. She quickly learned how different life is for those who aren't considered beautiful.
I was unable to get a job. My appearance, first of all, scared people off. And after that, I was having surgeries 1 to 2 every year, and so no company would insure me. And so they wouldn't hire me because of medical insurance. So I couldn't get anywhere.
Susan went through a decade of painful operations, feeling hopeful, only to have the tumors return. Then she experienced a serious surgical complication from an operation more than a dozen years ago. Drainage tubes in her face were removed too early, resulting in a massive infection. Faced with an incurable disorder, rejection in social life and the job market, and now a nightmarish surgical failure, Susan turned away from medicine.
I felt like I could never be successful. I could never have anything. I could never be anything.
In an attempt to escape the hopelessness of her situation, Susan turned to drugs. After years of rejection, she sought friendship with the only type of people who would accept her.
I became involved in a lower class of people, drug situations. They accepted me. They liked me. They didn't care what I looked like. And everybody else seemed to care.
Susan lost touch with her family, and they worried what would become of her.
My wife and I would both get we were always concerned and always wondered where she was. And then when we get the phone call, then we'd chastise her for not calling. You know, and then she'd stay in touch for a while, and then she might disappear again.
Susan grew more depressed. By 1990, she had 3 children that she loved and cared for deeply. But she struggled with her role as a single mother.
You know, my kids have been the greatest.
And I know it's not her fault. She's like that. It's because the Lord gave it to her to show everyone there's people that are different out there. And I love her that way.
Despite the challenges, Susan remained devoted to her children, but her personal life continued to go from bad to worse. In 1988, Susan's mother passed away. It was a devastating blow.
She was such a support to me and there for me constantly and just, you know, took care of everything for me. And after she died, I felt lonely, you know, in the hospital by myself, and so I just said, forget it. It's not getting me anywhere anyway. I just let the tumors grow. I wasn't interested in surgery anymore. There was no cure, there was no hope.
More than 10 years passed. Then, in 1998, a crisis in Susan's life led her to desperately seek a way to improve herself.
Ready?